maybe it was Doug Wilson, the difference between co-belligerents and allies. So we were a co-belligerent. We're in war with Stalin against Hitler, one of the worst mass murderers in history, but we're on the same side, right? An ally, they wouldn't be an ally, of course, right? But we are allies with Britain, right? With France, because we're on the same side. We have all the same goals. So in the culture wars and in government wars, whatever you want to say, we have co-belligerents. Like Trump he's not a religious conservative, social conservative, as we would call it. He's way more friendly to the LGB whatever than I think we should be. But that's okay, right? And we understand that. And this is just the first step in a very long process of re-Christianizing the culture. And so we're going to do things with people we may not agree with. They're co-belligerents. And especially across any Christian of any stripe, conservative side, whatever their theology is, we're in this together. We're allies together, and we need to really fight with them.
Welcome to the Revo Report. We're inspiring faith with reason and reason with faith. When we were talking about COVID, one of the things that I thought and I saw, seeing the governments take so much control and stopping free speech and censoring a lot of people, even the doctors that were speaking up against COVID and the vaccine, stopping people from traveling if they weren't vaccinated, stopping people from going to work, people getting fired. I thought, is this a precursor? Are they testing to see how far they can take the mark of the beast? How far the people would be willing to, let in and have their freedoms taken away? Did you ever get a sense that that's what COVID was? It was kind of this pre-test, so to speak, in terms of, okay, can we give them the mark now? Or let's see how far we can take them until we force them that, okay, you get the mark of the beast, and you can, only when you have the mark of the beast can you travel, can you eat, can you buy groceries, etc. Kind of in Revelations, right?
Well, there's nothing new about that. That happened in Rome. I mean, this idea of the mark, you can only buy and sell and so on and so forth. But see, that goes back to Babel. That goes back to this idea of concentrations of power and the idea that sinful human beings want to control, right? They want to be God over others, right? C.S. Lewis talks about this. They want to rule over others for their good, for these others' good, because they know better than everyone else, right? We're going to rule you for your good, and you're going to have to shut up and just follow orders because you're an idiot and you don't know what's good for yourself. That globalism, that thing that takes power and aggregates it into itself, that's sinful man. And that's what's so beautiful. So, you're Canadian, right? And both we and the Anglosphere, every part of it was the result of Alfred the Great. Starts with, I talk about St. Patrick basically bringing Christianity to the British Isles, then Alfred the Great, which was several hundred years later, and then through that, the rule of law, through Magna Carta, through the Glorious Revolution, and this idea that law would be over a ruler, and kings did not like that. And the American Revolution was the fulfillment of all of that. And so we've been bequeathed, we've been given this thing that says power cannot be, we will not allow it to be concentrated. And that's where we have limited government, this idea of limited government, which the American experiment was as good as it's ever been in the history of the world. Taking what we were given from the English, they just want the rights of Englishmen, and the Parliament wouldn't give it to us. So there has to be a rebellion, right? And that started with the progressive movement in the late 19th century, and it grew and grew through Roosevelt, the New Deal, through Johnson and the Great Society, and this administrative state. And a few years ago, I'd never even heard the phrase administrative state. The bureaucracy, in fact, the last 4 years of Biden, the administrative state was ruling. He was a puppet. He didn't really have to do anything because it just goes by itself. Now here's Trump and this unitary executive, but having power and energy in the executive. The founders said we need that, and that's what the left's freaking out. It's like, we just need to let the experts do it all, right? This is God's providence and ordaining to show us in COVID revealing how bad it really was. In fact, at our church, we went to this church in downtown Tampa, and this family showed up, and I didn't know anything about him, and got to meet him and found out that he was being forced to get the jab, and he refused. So he had to leave Canada, come to Florida so he wouldn't have to get that. Wouldn't be forced. And that's the beauty of America and federalism. What's been revealed in the last several years is that federalism isn't dead, which simply means, for those who aren't aware, is that the way the American government was set up was ideally 13 sovereign states, right, colonies, that could run their own affairs, and that the Constitution said there are these certain limited enumerated powers. Enumerated means just it's limited. And if it ain't there, you don't get that power. Now, of course, over the 19th, 20th century, the government and the administrative state took more and more of that power. But we've seen now, no, we're not letting you do that. And that's what Trump is. And Elon, the fact that God brought Elon on this is just, talk about red pills. Talk about a typical lefty, Silicon Valley guy becomes a hero. He buys Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insane.
So free speech, right?
Yes. And the idea, Jordan Peterson talks about this, you can't have free thought if you don't have free speech.
Well, what
right?
they're doing in the UK, right? They're arresting people for praying, for thinking something in your mind. Right. You're getting arrested.
And the internet, the UK, they're not going to get away with it either. I mean, we beautifully in America have the means that they don't have because they don't have a First Amendment. So who knows where that goes, but this awakening is happening all over the world too. And I believe God's going to re-Christianize the world because I'm a post-millennialist. I was all of 22 as I was continuing to write the book. I was thinking, okay, what biblical reason do I have for my optimism? There's one thing just to say, oh, I believe good things are going to happen. And yet I know it's not just us. So I know that. So I struggled with that. I thought it might be in creation. Romans 1, that God has revealed himself in creation and that he's continually doing that. And there's validity to that. But in August of 22, I was pan mill most of my life, meaning it's all going to pan out in the end because there just seemed to be too much speculation and end times stuff. Yeah. So in 14, I became mill. And for those that don't know, it doesn't really matter, but there's really not a millennium and whatever. And it actually turned me into more of a pessimist, which was interesting. And then in August of 22, I listened to James White give a sermon on something about positive. I thought, I want to listen to that. I had no idea. And he basically talked me into postmillennialism. And I've done a lot of study since then. But basically, God is bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth now here through us. That's the prayer, right? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. On earth. It isn't just us, but he can't do it without us. That's what he uses as us, sinners. And I believe there's going to be a progression that this Habakkuk 2:14, as the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And this is happening, Do we know that? Well, we'll see, right? But the internet, the Gutenberg press of the 21st century, the Catholic Church thought they could shut up Luther. And in weeks, all of a sudden, these ideas were all over Europe.